you're in normal jobs and you did things that weren't reading for people till you did eventually get to that. Like, how was it just going about everyday life in a kind of a normal job before, but having these abilities?
As a young girl, and I'm mentioning this because this is something that I witness quite a bit with maybe some of your listeners or even children that they have that are very, very intuitive. Because there is so much, the reality in this world is so skewed towards the scene, getting through school, doing things the right way, because there is not a large collective embracing of vertical or intuition or even prioritization of that within at least the culture in which I grew up with. A lot of intuitive people learn very quickly how to suppress that aspect of self, or to tune it off, or to negate it altogether, or to self gaslight, or even in some cases, and this is so, it is so, so sad when this occurs. A child with incredible intuitive abilities who is able to maybe see auras or see angels or the presence of things is actually told, if they're in like certain very religious families, that that is evil, that that is
Mm,
bad, whereby they actually come to fear
mm.
this aspect of themselves or feel shame surrounding this aspect of themselves. And that's a very strong thing that I know is going to be shifting as we move more deeply into the age of Aquarius that we're just stepping into now. With that said, throughout my upbringing, I could never turn I could never turn off the abilities. So what I became very adept at doing was giving the illusion of normal.
Mm.
So there was the illusion of normal that I was very, very good at structuring on the outside, depending on the circumstance, because I was not safe in the environment that I was in to be able to share certain things, to be able to talk about certain things. So I got good at the illusion of that within the horizontal world, but I also always maintained a very, very profound inner vertical life. And I was very blessed to have just a couple of people in my life. My next door neighbor was one that did understand these abilities, that helped me to foster and cultivate some of these abilities. And so I already had, by the age of about, I would say 14, I already had people. I was working with people who were
Wow.
50, 60 years old. It started happening very, very, very early. And early in my life, I also, to be able to manage this dimension, I had to create a process of meditation very early on. So even as a child, I would sit in meditation and create a sacred space whereby I could I could learn to communicate with spirit, to create my what's called my psychic library, which is my mechanism, my language for being able to translate what I'm receiving from spirit. So I spent I would say, much of my adolescence seemingly looking normal, but devoting myself a lot of time on the weekend to structuring that within myself. With that said, when I was about 17 years old, there was an experience where I was channeled. Into my channel came a very, very strong vision of a man who had died and and left in a dumpster. And within a couple of days, within the local news, there was a man that was missing.
Wow.
And I knew exactly where he was. And as a byproduct, it was so, the trauma was not knowing where he was. It's just so egotistical at this point in time. But I was 16, 17, I was afraid. The ego was the conflict that I had was more about what will happen to me
Yeah.
if I come forth and deliver this information. And so I sat for several days being absolutely terrified. Do I say something? And then it would almost be like I was like coming out of the closet. I knew that I would get questions about how, how do you know this? How did you know this? All of that sort of thing. Or do I not say anything? But that would not be of integrity. And so I had to choose between, it was basically a choice between like, shut down my channel, don't have this be ever a part of your life, or am I going to surrender? Am I going to do what's right in this situation? And the man's body was found in the dumpster where I said that it would be. But that experience for me, there was so much fear, the risk. It was at that point in time that I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want anything to do with this. And I actively tried to suppress my channel, which is very, 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 very difficult. It was so exhausting for the years that I, became a neuroscientist. I went to Brown. I was in neuroscience. I mean, most people struggle with opening their channel. That takes a lot of work. For me, it was a constant daily, almost effort, like full-time job to keep that suppressed. But the more that it was suppressed, the more that it was squeezed down, the more disconnected, the more unhappy I became within the context of my life. It's like everything started to become about attachment as opposed to connection. So I didn't feel connected to anything, to nature anymore. And that was not spirit trying to disconnect from me. This was me trying to disconnect from spirit and myself. And so as this went on, it was like a ticking time bomb. Or at the moment that my spirit knew that that suppression was absolutely killing me, my entire horizontal life exploded. Absolutely I lost every single thing. All my money, where I lived, the career path that I was on, it all exploded all at once. And I have never been as relieved as in that moment.
Wow.
The void came, the Friday came, and I was like, I have one of two choices. Either I can accept and surrender to the void, or I can stay in the void and die. And so just the shattering of this illusion and all of the time and the energy that it took to sustain that, when that shattered all at once, yes, there was grief, yes, there was fear, but it was like I could breathe again. And very, very quickly after that was when my vertical service began.